So the title of it is The Business Side of Perfusion, but I'm going to sort of modify this whole thing. So there are various different models. You've got hospital-based perfusion departments. They could be under nursing service, like at St. Luke's in the medical center, maybe some other places around the country. You could be employed by some surgeons. You can be employed by a contract group. You can be private as an individual or doing locums at various different places. And some important factors for any person who's working is money, benefits, security, and lifestyle. I think all of these, to varying different degrees, are important to all of us. And generationally, it appears that there are people who think money is, go ahead and we'll go ahead. I think we have a caller. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hey, can you, we appreciate you calling, but a couple of things. One, I have to tell you the phone lines are open because I'm going to give this talk first, and we put the number down. And could you do me a huge favor and just wait until I give that notification to call in and then call back if you wouldn't mind?
I sure will, thank you.
Thank you, just a few minutes, thank you. But I think to varying degrees, it was Vicky. Yeah. I
I'm
would
really
have said
curious
it to somebody
what she
else.
had to say.
Yeah. No, she'll call back.
Okay.
Vicky, call back. I'm very sorry. But so I think to varying degrees, we all have a different view of how much money versus time, how much security versus lifestyle, work time, and so forth. So I think it's important. But there are these opposing forces that just take place all the time. There's the employer, get the most out of any one employee for the least amount of pay, and the employer and the employee work the least for the most pay. And I had mentioned this earlier. Now, those are just extreme examples. I think a lot of employers understand what it's like to be a rank and file worker, and they want to provide for a good work-life balance. And I think a lot of employees are much more willing to do more, go that extra mile, if they feel appreciated. And I don't think that's anything to do with generations. I just think that's human nature. But nevertheless, somewhere in there is a balance. There are some intangibles with employers. You want an employer that values the lives of their employees. Employers hate attrition. They constantly work to grow and add services. In other words, they want to create more work for you to do so that they can then hire somebody else, because they can't hire somebody else in hopes of growing more work. They want to grow the work before they hire people. That's just a business decision. And so everybody has to be on that same page. You want employers that offer opportunities to do stuff outside of the box kind of thinking, like this. That are approachable and will listen to better ways and more efficient ways of doing things. That's a good employer. A great employee is highly motivated, just wants to work 24/7. They look out for the department of the company. But they have boundaries, and that's important too. But communication is the key. You can have boundaries, but you need to be able to communicate those in a clear, reasonable way. They take the good with the bad, so they have balance. There's no perfect job. Every job has its good points and its bad points. And they're not afraid to speak up and offer suggestions in a respectful way. That's what you want from your employees. And if you have a complaint, for God's sakes, please have some suggested solutions. The worst employee is the one who just points out everything that's wrong, but never gives a suggestion as to how to make it better. We are a cost center as perfusionists. This conference is really driven towards perfusionists, the only CEUs, but I know a lot of other people may be watching that aren't perfusionists are also looking at this. Okay, hold on. Have they seen these slides? Oh, I'm sorry. Everybody, I've been moving my slides on my computer, but I'm forgetting to hit the button here. So we've all seen all of this stuff, and I apologize for that, but I'm learning, okay? So we're on this slide. And so we are a cost center, not a profit center. So first of all, I call BS on that. And I'll tell you why I do that. You can't do heart surgery without us, okay? You can't run the cath lab without us because that could be an emergency case, even though they have freestanding cath labs. But those, that's a different issue, and I'm not sure that's such a good idea. And then what about ECMO? Who's going to take care of that? Second, it's actually true. So it's a contradiction. A cabbage gets paid about $31,000. That's the average, and this is the study. I'll go over this chart with you here in just a second. But out of that, they have to pay lights, equipment, staff, disposables, the ICU, the step down, and us. There is no charge that the hospital is able to recover for our services. We are part of the bundled care of the patient. So here's the information that comes from Medicare payments, and you can see here that the average cost for a cabbage procedure is about $31,329. Back surgery, hip fracture, and colectomy. So you can see they get paid a pretty good amount per procedure, but they still have to pay all of those things. That equates to that $25,000 is higher by 3% if it is a low volume or teaching facility, and it's costing about $171 million annually because the lower volume accounts, non-teaching facility, forgive me, the lower volume accounts are far less efficient, hospitals are far less efficient, and the patients are actually in the hospital longer. They're intubated longer, they have a longer length of stay, ICU stay, and total length of stay. But I think this last paragraph is really the final sentence, is the researcher concluded that the steps to improve cabbage efficiency are twofold. Advise patients to avoid low-volume healthcare providers and encourage investment in improving the reliability of hospital care. For us in private industry, how many hospitals are we affiliated with that do less than 50 cases a year?
None.
None?
Maybe
At least
one.
a couple.
Maybe
One for sure.
Maybe
Pretty darn
one.
close.
Pretty darn close, okay. But that's
I would
pretty
say
low.
two.
You would say two?
Two.
Yeah, but I think that's common.
Yeah.
I don't think
Right.
that's so uncommon. There's 180,000 cabbages done per year in the United States, and of the big facilities in the medical center, that's only about 20% maybe that get done there. All the rest are done in community hospitals around the country. But stay away from low volume accounts. Profit. 200 hearts a year is going to yield at that $25,000 or $31,000 about $6.2 million. To operate the hospital, it's $25,000. Based on that $25,000 is going to cost about $5 million. Does not also include, however, the loss leader of the cath lab, because that generates an enormous amount of money. But you're still looking at a 200 heart account makes little over about $1.2 million if they're doing 200 cases. That's not a bad profit, okay? But they want to make more. And what cuts into profits is long vent, ICU hospital, if they have a stroke, renal failure, reoperation, staffing, attrition, vacation coverage, FTE versus contract. All of these things cut deeply into that profit center. So if they're making $2 million or $1.2 million and they have one stroke, then they're down to $1.1 million because you're losing about, I'd say, $75,000, $100,000 to the hospital that's going to eat because of that stroke. Oh, I had to push the buttons. Okay. If the hospital has FTEs, 3 FTEs are going to cost the hospital about $400,000. Or they're 200 cases a year. They might only have 2, which means you're 50% call, which means you're probably working every day, and they're probably doing cases on the weekends as well. And so you're not going to have any life work-life balance. But if you have 3 FTEs, you may, unless you get an ECMO. If you're doing ECMO, then you're not going to have any. You're going to have to bring people in to help watch that. If you're just a contract group that's doing just that hospital, in order to make the same living, it's going to cost the hospital roughly the same. But where contract companies come into play and where this ability to staff is when you have a contract company covering multiple hospitals that are 200, 150 case hospitals, because this usually it's the same set of surgeons and they're moving around, and you can do this with far fewer staff than if you had to put 2 or 3 FTEs in every single one of those hospitals. In the above model, this one here, the final one, in servicing multiple hospitals in the area as a contract group, you're going to save the hospital roughly $200,000 per year. So you can see in that scenario, there is profit capability for the company and there's savings capability for the hospital. And where in that range it falls is going to depend on negotiating, competition, and other various things like that. You want to bring value. You want to understand the market. And yes, it is highly complex, but it's very easily understandable. And I highly recommend to my younger colleagues they spend the time to do that. Provide a balance, define your own job, and communicate it. I think that's very important to do. Communication is the key to all of us understanding each other. Go to meetings and bring back new technology that could be a revenue source for the hospital, like TCD, like the angiovac, like CRRT. Consider what you are being paid for and your workload, but remember, create a balance, but always be perceived as a team player, but never a doormat. And understand your employer as well and what motivates them. So it's a two-way street, whether it's generational and old people like me dealing with young people like you at the end of the, or mid-range people like you and Rodell and Stephanie. The only way we're all going to be able to work together successfully and be able to do what we do and have personal satisfaction, regardless of how we define that satisfaction, is to talk to each other. And I think that historically, perfusionists are the worst. You could have 2 different groups at 2 different hospitals directly across the street from each other, and the perfusionists never talk to each other. It's craziness. I think we need to be more collaborative, come together more, understand each other more, respect each other's views more, not we think you are this, therefore it's bad, and you think we are that, and therefore that's bad, but a better understanding of what makes each of us tick. I think that was my last slide, Raj. Oh, I forgot to do. That was my last slide. I forgot to hit the button again. I did terrible with this. Okay, are we back on?
Well, I'm able to teach you how to use Keynote.
Yeah, I'm working on it, okay? Remember, do I have to go back to my chart? Okay, I had to learn this stuff, all right?
No, you're very good, actually, Joe.
Thank you. Okay, so thoughts about all of what I said about work? Rodell?
No,
and anybody that wants to call in, Raj, you want to put that, I'm so sorry, put that that number up. So if anyone out there in the web, Vicky, and I appreciate your patience, if you want to call in, now is the time to do it. So call in, and I got to check and see if anybody sent any chats.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ro, I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's actually, no, it's a good point. It's honestly a two-way street. You know, I like to bring in new things and I like to get heard. And it's sometimes we do need that employer to, you know, talk to us. You know, maybe we do have some ideas or just don't know how to convey them. But you do a really good job of it. I think every employer has to find each employee's passion. And I think that begins that two-way street. So I think you've actually kind of tapped into Steph and myself when it comes to that.
Well, thank you. I think you were paying me a compliment.
I was.
Well,
I
thank
was.
you. Thank you so much. You're making me feel bad. Is Stephanie there?
No, she's actually downstairs. She's
Aw.
making plans. We are on vacation.
Oh, and
This is
that's right.
we are on
Rodell is in
vacation.
Baltimore
This is-
seeing his new grandbaby,
Yes.
and which is fantastic, and was kind enough to take time out and Skype with us.
You gonna wake
Yeah.
the baby up and show that's the baby, or no?
No, actually, we are at our Airbnb
Oh.
because we don't stay at hotels anymore. Although Joe, being the old guard, thought it was very strange that we were staying at someone else's home, but what the kids do, I'm embracing it.
Yeah, it is. It's bizarre to me. It's bizarre to me, and that's going to be our last session. Is just call in and chat and stuff about that very thing, just on a question and answer discussion. It's going to get pretty intense because I've got some really interesting. I've got some deep thoughts about this, and I'm going to challenge you guys to a lot of different things. I think we have a caller. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hey, you're on the air.
Hi. This is Vicki calling back again.
Yes. Thank you so much for your patience.
And so I just have a couple of comments to make about your comments earlier. Hospitals and supervisors learn who they can lean on to cover staffing needs, and sometimes their staffing problem isn't the immediate problem. It's that they have caused the own problem through their administration, and they learn who they can call and press and depend on coming in, and I think they dip into people's goodwill tank and play on their emotions to come in. So with your question earlier of feeling satisfied to go in and do the case or to stay home with your family, I think it's a hard choice to make when you get satisfaction out of both, but you can't be played all the time either. So I think it's good to give more sometimes, and it's also good to say no sometimes and protect your own goodwill sake from going dry. I think there's always balance, but there has to be balance and respect on both sides. And you have to make that decision what's good for you and your family to live with too. And it's not just the job that's important.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. And Roger, we'll just call that number back after we hang out with Vicki, because I think this is a good discussion to have. Now, you were a nurse for 20 years, and then an anesthetist for another 10, 15 years. So you have a pretty long work experience. But how much of your, and I remember you having to leave in late at night to go sit with a patient that you were going to do an epidural on. Now you were on call, but every time you did, I sensed at least that you had a level of pride associated with you were going to be going and doing that. So are you saying that given the same set of circumstances that I presented to Mike and the entire panel really on that procedure where you're called because let's say you do some block that nobody else can do, or whoever was on call maybe didn't have the same level of confidence from the physician, and you had you missed some event, let's say your mom's birthday party, would you be disgruntled about it, disappointed about it, or would you be prideful of it? I think that's really the crux of where I was trying to go with that.
Well, I think there's always pride in the work that I did. I think it was. I think where you're getting is, are you resentful because you're having to go in and miss your family time? When when you're on call and you've taken on that responsibility and you know what that responsibility is, it's hard to be resentful when that's what you've signed on to.
Yeah, but you're not. But
I
the
think
scenario.
what I'm talking about is when,
but
when administrations or hospitals
but I'm
use
asking you.
your goodwill as a tool to get you in to cover their staffing needs when they mismanage their staffing problem.
Well, I think that's a great point, and I think we need to elaborate on that. But you're missing. You're not answering my question first, which is the scenario is you're not on call. You're not on call, but you have a unique capability that is more valued than the person who is on call, and you're being personally asked to come help take care of this patient, and it results in you missing your mom's birthday party. Are you going to be resentful of that, or is that going to give you a sense of pride without any sense of resentment at all? Not anything to do with administration's mismanagement or department heads' mismanagement. It's specific to that unique set of circumstances.
Well, I think that goes back to the old saying of that graveyards are full of indispensable people. You can't think that you're that indispensable that that it's only going to be you that can take care of the problem. I can understand occasional circumstances. There's always going to be emergencies, and you know, you just had 4 or 5 ECMOs going in, and it really creates a staffing emergency. And I think people can see that. They can see when there's unique circumstances that you need to be there, and there's times when you're just being called in because it's easy to get you to come in.
Well, now that brings up a separate point. You really, I mean, and I appreciate it. I'm not really getting from you what I'm asking, but you're bringing up another issue, and that is staffing levels of the employers. And you know, let's talk about that. So right now, if you get called in but you're not on call, what's the likelihood you will get called in? Is it very, very, very low, almost so remote it's not going to happen, or does it ever happen?
If I'm not on call, no, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Not where I'm at, but we have a different relationship with, you know, our hospital is different also than y'all's relationship with your surgeons, and just the size and whatnot too.
Well, the dynamic is different. You're
Right,
an
the dynamic's
institutionalized
different.
department and so
and
forth.
none of my surgeons know my name, I'm sure. So
They don't know your name? Really?
well, it's just different. You
It's
guys
just
know them
different.
on a personal level, and we don't.
Yes.
So.
Okay. I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. You mean
true.
Dr. Lowry doesn't say, he doesn't bring you a cup of coffee every morning?
No. he
That
doesn't
I
do
am
that.
surprised about. Okay.
You're gonna have to make a phone call.
I am absolutely surprised. I'm going to call him.
Please
I'm
don't do
calling
that.
him. No, I am calling him. So, you've seen, I think, both sides of this. And Vicki, you can elaborate on this as well, because you worked for the state, but you've also done some private work, and so I think you might have some good perspective. Have you worked for employers who simply did not make sure you had the resources you need to even come to where there was routine, that your life was interrupted because of a lack of resources, and then you were not compensated for that sacrifice you had to make, but it was simply expected by your employer?
No, I was always compensated.
Okay. So, but you were either a state employee or of something of that sort. So let me ask Mike. Mike,
That's happened frequently through all the different companies that I worked with. We routinely would say that we're one person down, and that seemed to be the way it was run. If they're one person down, that means we got everything covered, plus additional if they volunteer the extra work, and so we can cut off one FTE and make more profit from what we've done before.
in other words, you were overstaffed.
We were understaffed.
No, I know, overstaffed.
And we were never overstaffed.
Right, you were
No,
overstaffed.
never
Grossly
never
overstaffed.
And to the point there, there's been a lot of times that me being around as many years as I have, I've done a lot of proctoring of the new employees that have come on with the different companies that I've been with. So more often than not, I was asked to go in with this person to do the more difficult case. I've been asked on certain times when I wasn't on call, they're doing it, but they maybe have not seen that before. Could you go in? Especially with ECMO, if some of our new people did not really know how to put a person on ECMO and didn't feel comfortable with it. So there were many times I was asked to go in and provide that backup and knowledge to those people, and that happened quite frequently. So I would see scenarios that would play out a lot, and it got to the point where I would just say, Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, I'm on call all the time, whether or not I'm on call or not. And that was just something that I did because I knew the chances of that happening, especially with some of the new employees, was gonna happen. And I just accepted that as part of the extra responsibility that I would have to do, and I
That came
took
with your
it.
seniority and
It
experience.
came with seniority and experience, yeah.
Even though it should not have been something that your employer expected you to do.
That's correct.
I agree with you 100% on that. And I think that's what they are way smarter than us about.
Yep.
Ro, you recently joined our group, but you came from a hospital setting for many years. What was your experience like based on what Vicki was describing, what everybody here Mike was just describing, in terms of your life being interrupted, even if you were not on call and the responsible party at that time?
Well, here's the thing, it's I was never the guy that was getting called because, I was in the middle. But I felt like I needed the help where I could. I mean, if I knew somebody was going in, I just knew that, like, hey, I can lend a helping hand. And, I know I'm not on call, but I never want to be in a situation where I couldn't handle it and an extra pair of hands could be used. So, I did it a couple times.
Okay.
I mean, I still do it now. I mean, if I know that, say, like Patrick was in a jam, like I knew, like one time he was doing a very tough case, and I just knew he was going to be there all night.
That was like 20 times.
Give you a break.
Yeah, but that's just, is that kind of taking this whole thing full circle? Is that our profession, or is that generational?
I don't know if that's our professional or generational. I think it's just courtesy. I think it's just, hey, it's that kind of like, hey, I don't want to get stuck with my pants down if I could help it. It's I don't expect that from anyone else, but it's really, really nice.
Vic, what do you think? You want to finish up your call with any thoughts?
Unique spot where, like, hey, I can call, Stephanie and say, Stephanie, I know you're not on call, but hey, I need help. And she'll be right there.
That's because Stephanie's the best. Vicki, go ahead.
I would like to think that it's not generational. I think we sometimes think with the younger people that they don't have that type. But I think it's the young people that tend to have the young kids and more responsibility when you get people that are in their their 40s, 50s. They have less of that responsibility. So I don't think it's that they don't care. I think it's just they have so much responsibility spread around that they have to say no for.
Okay, well, Vicki, thank you so much for that. Roger, do you want to go ahead and call that other person back?
Yeah, I believe
also, too, Joe, I mean, here's something, too. I mean, I just had some really great mentors, and, and they passed on some stuff that I want to pass on as well, from my experience as well. I mean, I think I get some satisfaction from that as well. I think that's another reason I liked being a clinical instructor. You know, it's like, hey, if I can pass on a little piece of knowledge and that'll help out a patient, that's what gets me up. In the morning.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to take another quick break. Welcome back, everybody. Good to see everybody back with us. We have a caller, and of course, if you want to call, Roger will keep the number up so that you can do that. David, do you have some comments? So where you work, who are you, what do you do?
I'm in Houston, and I'm a perfusionist.
Say again, you kind of, say that, hold on, say that again. You got real muffled.
Okay, I apologize. I work in Houston as an auto transfusionist, and obviously I work in the perfusion group. So I think that I can see and form an opinion, fairly educated, on what I see coming in. And I guess my question to the panel is that with these young and upcoming professionals, do you guys, I guess for a lack of a better term, find it necessary to take them under your wing and kind of show them the ropes as to what real life in a perfusion company is like?
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean, you know, what we're all in this for. And obviously, I'm like a Gen Xer. Okay, so I'm cut out of a different cloth than some of these guys are. I'm prior military. So, looking at what's coming up, you're seeing that they lose sight of the prize. You know, the prize at the end of the rainbow, which is patient outcome being as good as it can be. And what you find is they lack the, I guess you could say, I don't want to say work ethic. It's just their generation as they are brought up to not necessarily make the same sacrifices as we do or we have. And I guess that's what my point is, that all of us in the past, in the old guard, found it necessary to do whatever was necessary to get a favorable patient outcome. Now, what we're seeing is a lot of these guys are not necessarily used to making these kind of sacrifices, and I just want to know if, you know, the panel or Rodell or yourself find it, you take on the responsibility of kind of educating these guys.
Okay, so I think I got it. And let me ask you, David, real quickly, just how old are you?
48.
So 48. So you fall into the Generation X, isn't that right? So you fall into Generation X, but kind of older Generation X. So kind of, sort of, just in it, as opposed to, because I think I don't have to go back and look at that slide, but I think 54 started was the baby boomers, right? 54 was
That
the
should be
youngest
about
baby
right,
boomer.
actually.
I think it was
46 to 64.
Yeah, 46. What year was were you born?
69.
59. So
69.
69. Okay, yeah. So
Game
5
10
years.
years.
5 years out. Okay. Well, listen. All right. So we may have some other callers. So we're gonna address this and put the other caller on hold. So we're gonna disconnect from you, but address this. Okay. So it's a good question. I mean, I think David brings up some very interesting points that I think we have been addressing throughout this conference, and that is that he's a little older. He's in Rodell's, maybe he's a little older than Rodell. You're not that old, are you, Rodell? But he's in his, he said he was 48. How old are you?
I'll be 40 this month.
40 so he's actually 8 years
He's
older
closer
than
to
you.
me. I'm
He's closer
50.
to you, yeah. So I think that there is this perception, but I think we've been hammering at this all night long, and I don't think that the perception, at least this is my take on it, is a reality. I think that, you know, the younger generation are just as interested in patient outcomes, in making sure that they do a good job for what their responsibility is. But I'm distilling this down and coming up in my mind with this is a difference in holding employers more to account for providing not only a job, but a job that respects a work-life balance. Whereas I think that the millennials, the younger generation, is wanting to provide a good work product to their employers without being the doormat or being the always available. In other words, they want to work because they want to have money to live and enjoy their life, the experience of life. Whereas I think we, the older generation, and to some extent, the Generation Xers, Rodell and Patrick, we lived to work. They're working to live. We were living to work. And I don't really think that defines, I don't think that's bad. Frankly, I think I don't know if they have it right, but I can really say honestly, I don't think they have it wrong.
You know, not too far from being a baby boomer, I was almost a traditionalist by the first slide, being that I'm pretty close to that age anyway. And our generation was, you were what you did. As
You were
worked.
defined by work.
You were defined by your work.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably took it, what I see is the problem here, we took it to one extreme, very much to an extreme. Whereas the millennials, I think, don't want to go to that point. So the gap is there because we thought our work defined us, whereas they want to define themselves with the work that they do.
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think so.
So
It's tough.
it's a perception.
It's somewhat
To me,
convoluted.
it's a perception. It's
You know?
a perception. Yeah.
It is a perception. Let's go around the table. What say you? How do you address David, who thinks, and I don't think he was being insultive. Okay, you go ahead and put it on. Hello, you're on the air.
Hey,
Hey, who's this?
hey, this is Min Tran.
Hey, Min Tran. Hey, Min, how are you?
Good.
Good. What you got for us?
Well, I just want to say that I think everyone there tonight made some pretty good points, and with Vicky's comments calling in and the things she had to say, and I feel like I'm probably only a quarter of my time in my career with what you and Mike are, but so I guess I'm kind of in the middle of the pack compared to Christina and Brett and Patrick up there. I'm probably right up there where Rodell is because we're about the same age. But I think nowadays where things are going with work ethics and the new perfusionists that are coming in and perfusionists my age and older, I think, you know, it's ongoing and evolving, you know, with depending on where you work and the places you've been and where you train. And I think it's hard to say that the younger ones are getting lazy or their work ethics aren't just quite as the same as where we are. But I think it has a lot to do with your background and just the training you've come from and the places where you worked, and you know, those places really impact and make you the perfusionist you are, and you know, those are the tools that you take to your job every day.
Yeah, I think that's also a very good point. So do you feel that it is more nurturing, I guess, how you grew up, with your parents, the example they set, the values they instilled in you, your early career, how you were trained, your first jobs, and sort of what the expectations were of you versus just simply what age group you are and those experiences that were essentially social in nature. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I feel that those factors definitely impacted my work ethics and who I am today. I didn't become a perfusionist straight out of school. I was a respiratory therapist for about 5 years. Even before that, I've always worked, when I was in college, and my parents had a grocery store and I helped them at work. So I knew work ethics and what it felt like working as a teenager and growing up in college, and then being a respiratory therapist, dealing with patient care and dealing with multiple personalities and different departments. And those things have helped me put together a strong work ethics and background to be, where I am today. I've also had the great opportunity to work at different facilities and programs that help me embrace what it's like to work at a hospital setting versus a contract setting. When I worked in Virginia, I worked for a hospital-based, contract group, but it was a small hospital-based system. So you didn't deal with so many personalities, but I got to feel what it felt like to work the kind of hours and with a short staff. And I also worked at Methodist, where Brett and Christina works, and I worked there for 3 or 4 years. And I got to see what it was like to work for a hospital setting in a bigger program institute, the kind of hours that they put in, the responsibilities, the multiple surgeons they work for. And so definitely, you had both scenarios have different hours and longevity of work schedules compared to probably what every other small or large contract company may offer. And I think it's just those experiences that you gather from when you're a new perfusionist to 5 to 10 years experience. I think hopefully most perfusionists will pick the strong work ethics along the way and learn to work as a team. Understand that the concept of, you're not on call, but then you're always on call, like Mike said. You may have new people come in to the program or to the staff, and you may have to help out. And that's just part of being a team player.
That's exactly right, Ben. And remember, first call does it all. Okay, that's another saying that you guys need to remember. All right.
That's
so
right.
we've got, stay on the line with us, men. So we've got 2 questions, chat questions. One from CS. I need to ask CS and Jennifer, if you're still online here, can you just send me a quick text chat and tell me what your professions are and your age? Your professions and age. So CS asks, does the panel have any experience with the perception that baby boomers and Generation Xers have a more patient-centered company approach than millennials, who are perceived as patient-centered and individual? And to finish the last thought, he adds, millennials are perceived as patient-centered but individualized, whereas millennials are more aware of their skill and value than what Generation Xers or baby boomers have historically been. That's question 1. And then Jennifer has a question. She's a perfusionist in Birmingham, and I wonder how much of the observations made of millennial behavior has been impacted by their exposure to older generations expressing their regrets, comments, and opinions And she adds, as in boomers expressing regret for working long hours and sacrificing family time despite having pride in their work. Those are two really, really good questions. So, let's start with Skype. Let's start with Rodell. Rodell, what is your thoughts on boomers and Generation Xers being more patient-centered / company approach than millennials being more patient-centered individual approach, and how much of your experience with younger millennials coming up in your training centers have been influenced, if you will, by your perception, your philosophy of how work should be done. So the question is to you first, and then I want to go around the table and have everybody address that very same question. So I'm not going to ask it again. Go ahead, Ro.
No, that's actually, those are really great questions. It's really funny. Are they? That's really good. I guess it's very strange. The baby boomer generation just wants to wants that younger generation. I feel that younger generation, including myself, not just the millennials, to be trained through their type of attrition, because I think they feel that their type of training was the best. And I'm not saying that it wasn't or it was. I think they just want to have them get dragged through the mud so they can experience everything and just be that much better. And I guess maybe on the other side of the coin, that millennial wants that older generation to see their side of that coin, what they've been through, and because they feel they've had the best training. Do I think they've been influenced by, say, some of the regret of the baby boomers? I think so. I really do. That's just my opinion. I mean, I've been influenced. I mean, I've heard it in my profession. Behind the pump room door, if you will, like they wanted to see their kids, but they just had this tie to their profession and that need to provide that type of service because no one else could do it.
Mm-hmm. Good points.
Oh, you wanna go ahead?
No, it's on you.
No.
No, you're next.
I'm thinking still.
You're
Okay,
up.
I'll take
No.
Hey, maybe it's on.
The patient is dying. The clock is running.
This
Okay.
is not the same thing.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. No flow. Brain's dying. Come on. Go on, pump.
I guess in regards to the question about are we influenced by the baby boomers and their regret for not being present more, I think, yeah, that definitely has, that makes an impact. And the second question, I really didn't, it was more of...
Yeah, well, are you more centered towards, the way I'm reading the question, and it could be that I'm just not reading it well, a patient-centered, but as an individual, in other words, patient-centered, individualized, your life, your responsibility to them, or the team concept, patient-centered. In other words, you still care about these patients. You have the same value of the patient, but you have an individual mentality of I'm important too versus more about the team is important. I as an individual am just part of that team.
I think it's a combination of both. For me personally, I mean, like we were talking about, I do value work-life balance, but that doesn't mean that I don't value teamwork and being a team player for my team and, being there for a teammate if I need to, or even if they don't ask, that sort of thing. So I think it's both, but I think maybe we value more than the baby boomers and the Gen X, the work-life balance. But
Patrick?
So I think I would be I guess I'm a Generation X, but a pretty old one. So I'm probably in between them. And I have spent a lot of my career working as hard as I could. So I feel like I'm learning things from, millennials, important lessons. And
Me too.
yeah, I know you kind of leaned that way earlier, and you know, I think that they kind of have it. But as far as what was the second question? Can you repeat what was the?
Yeah. In other words, the first question has to do with, and I think it's just complimentary that all generations are patient centered. We care about the patient 1st. I think everybody gets that. Nobody cares less about whether the patient lives or dies, or has a great outcome. But I think K-Dog says you're super cute, by the way, on the K-Dog.
I am.
I don't know who K-Dog is, but they said you're super cute. Patrick. With all of that said, but they focus more on the team versus themselves as an individual. So are you thinking that I as a person am ultimately what's important, or the team is more important than I as an individual as being part of the team?
Yeah. Okay, what's great about being a perfusionist is that you have a skill that they can't do that procedure without you. And so you put a lot of, you know, it's a really wonderful thing to have that kind of a skill that everybody, not everybody, but in your profession that they need you to do it. It can't be outsourced to some other country or anything like that. You have to be there, and you've got to, and so that's a big responsibility, and you can take pride in that. The team part of it, if you work with a good team, there's a lot of pride in that, and it feels great to work with a great team. I'm working with a great team right now where everybody supports each other, but I've been on the other side of things as well where you're not. And so, you know, can you teach that? I guess that's just sort of life experience. I hope I've answered the question.
No, I think you have. I think both of you have done all three of you, including I think we lost Rodell, done an extremely effective job at answering that question. Mike?
To the first part of the question, yeah, I think the older groups do tend to want the team approach to be the stronger indicator of their satisfaction in the industry, and I think it's really, really important. Like I said, Patrick too, he's part of my team, and I work now with the best team I've ever worked with in my entire life. Been very fortunate to do that. I can honestly say that. And when you have a great team, you realize how important that team really is. To the millennials and the individualistic, that's fine too. That's fine too. I think, you know, if the individual wants to become a better individual, and I think that is the approach that you guys are doing, that you want to be able to stand out. And I think that's great. I appreciate that. To the second part of it, and I may have had more to say about this than the other people because I was the one that answered that, yeah, I could give up my daughter's recital, which I never did. But I did feel the need to be important for the job that I did. It was self-actualizing, and it was very important to do a good job and to have people know that, you know, Mike Brown did that case, and we can always depend on Mike for those types of situations. Do I feel that we gave up a lot? More from a personal responsibility, given too much of myself, possibly, and robbing some of the attentions from my family. I was very fortunate to have been married to a CVOR nurse my entire life who understood what my life was about. So that helped a heck of a lot. Would I try to have more of a balance if I were to do it all over again? Yeah, but I didn't think that was allowed to me being an old timer, because it was always instilled, you know, you work till the work is done, and then if there's any time left over, that's when you enjoy. So
Good points. Professor Brett?
As far as the I and team, I mean, I personally think you better yourself to better the team. I go into work and I try and do the best I can. And I think that it will help the team in the long run. And of course, I want to have good teammates. If not, then it's going to be miserable, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, if your team, and And I think I'm hearing all of you very clearly that in a pinch, none of you, nobody, whether you're just graduated from school 2 years, 36 years, 20 years, Min 15 years, Rodell 15, 18 years, me, they call you and say, I really need your help. They are not joking. And you know what the consequences are of not that you know what they're going through. Mm-hmm. So you're going to go. And I think that that's been a large part of this conversation, but I don't necessarily think that's really what the message is. But you're going to do it for 2 reasons. One of those reasons is you know what they're going through. They're in trouble, and you got to get there. You got to help them. But you also know it could happen to you, and you want to be a part of a team that will come and help you. So if you don't, and you say, sorry, good luck, then what should you then expect? You probably won't get the same thing, and I don't think any of us would ever do something like that, but we would be upset by that, but we wouldn't punish them or anybody else for it. It would just be bad. Because I think that by and large, the human experience, I have a lot of faith in humanity. Even though there's been many things that have happened to me in my life that have at times brought humanity into question and people's values or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, the majority of people, whether they're medical professionals like us, perfusionists, physicians, nurses, CRNAs, ER paramedics, first responders, teachers, it doesn't really make any difference what it is. I think that we as humans inherently want to help others, and we gain pride and gratification from that. So, and I think that the message here is really about both personal responsibility, expectations, and needs, and also responsibility by institutions, program directors, department managers, company owners, whatever, to recognize that times have changed. We're no longer in the Industrial Revolution. It is the information age on steroids compared to what I'm used to. And I think that to some degree, your expectations are, well, to a large degree, rephrase this, reasonable, but at the same time, a small portion of it maybe not really completely that I agree with. And at the same time, I think that for the Gen Xers and for the baby boomers like Mike and I, and for Min as a Gen Xer, Ro as a Gen Xer, that what we've done in large part, I think was right for us, but at the same time, a portion of that I disagree with, have my regrets, you have your regrets, everybody has our regrets for various reasons. But in our profession has a higher calling associated with it. Patrick, I think, brought it up. We're one of very few people. You think about the city of Houston, as big as this city is, and we probably have 20% of everyone that knows how to do our job sitting at this table and on that television monitor right there. That's in comparison to the number of nurses, the number of even physicians, the number of paramedics. It's baffling to me. However, I also think that Vicky earlier on brought up some incredibly powerful points, which was that employers have had a history of and a habit of taking advantage of that sense of responsibility that we have, that we've tried to impart to you have, Min has, and you have too, but they have shoved that into our psyche and made us feel like your sacrifice is absolutely required. And we did not have the savvy, the social interaction, the communication. We were living in a very confined space. So we viewed things from a much smaller microcosm than your global perspective because of how you grew up. And you're recognizing that, no, you're the employer. You have a responsibility to make sure we have enough staff. This is not acceptable that I have no personal life because of my job. We're not talking about the exceptional times. Those are different. Whereas we saw that as that is the job, but it's not. However, and with that said, what made you a great, and I will say this for the record, Mike, Patrick, Min, you're on the phone, absolutely incredibly great technicians and perfusionists in an operating room where if my loved one was dying, I would want any of them there, is the very thing that employers take advantage of and that they did in sacrificing all that time in their life, because their exposure and experience in doing this job is so much more than what you guys are really ever going to see. There's no way the days that we grew up in will ever be repeated.
Hey, I've got a neighbor who I love this quote. He's always trying to get me to play golf with him, and I play a little bit of golf, but not that much. And whenever I say no, I don't have time because I've got to do all these things for whatever reason, he always says, when you're about to die, you are not going to sit there and say, I wish I hadn't played all that golf. And I love that quote.
Was my commentary too convoluted? I'm not sure. I kind of almost lost myself. Min, you have any final thoughts? Rodell, you have any final thoughts? Let's do Min first and then Rodell. And then I think we're going to we're over time. We're over time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? Huh?
Someone needed to round you up.
It was exciting.